Hi everyone and welcome back to the Love You channel. Today we're going to be talking about the concept of fear and how fear can hold us back from things that we want in life and can also prevent us from getting closer to self-love and self-acceptance. So today me and Andrew are going to be going over this. And Andrew?
Yeah, before we start to dive into fear, I did want to review what we've covered so far in our first 3 lessons. So we began the course by talking about our thinking and that how each of our elements in our thinking are uniquely different because as human beings, we all have different experiences, we all have different memories, we all have different things that have happened to us. And one of the biggest components of our thinking, because of our life and what's happened to us, is the fear that we've created in our life. So when we think about that first lesson and we look at the computer program and all the elements in it, fear is dominant. And remember from the first lesson that what you say and what you do and what you don't say and what you don't do are the things that either lead us to what we want or they don't. So also implied in that is that if we are going for what we want and there are things that we want in our life and that we're doing things that we love to do, that brings us closer to being happy, and being satisfied, being fulfilled really helps us in this journey to self-love and self-acceptance. So in our second class,
Yes.
we created a list of things we wanted to create. And we looked at all the areas that we would like to create. Health and relationships, material objects, career. And after the first lesson, we talked about fear and how we're going to dive into fear. So today, and for the next 2 lessons, we're really going to explore this concept. Ashley's going to start by telling us something in her life where fear held her back. Ashley?
When you told me that this is what we were going to be discussing today, there was 100 stories that were going through my mind about how I've created fear in my life and how I've allowed that to stop me from doing numerous of things. And the first one that comes to mind for me is wanting to go to Disney World, but stopping myself from going because I was afraid that I was too fat to ride the rides. I was afraid that my seatbelt wasn't going to fit. I was afraid that I was going to not be able to get through all the parks because I was going to be too tired. What people would say about me, I mean, there's just so many things that I would think about that would stop me from going. And
Did you want to go?
It's always been a dream of mine to go to Disney World and just have that experience since a child.
So as Ashley's speaking, I'm thinking that what we got to realize is that most of the fear that you have in your head is not real. It's imagined fear, meaning that you're making it up. So as she's talking and she's describing this experience of going to Disneyland, I want you to realize she's not been to Disneyland. So she's imagining what Disneyland is going to look like for her. So it's all up here. Now, the power today in knowing that it's all up here is that given that it's up here, who can change what's up here? So that fear that she just described is what I call fear of identity. And fear of identity is the kind of fear where how people perceive you and how people think about you, or how you think people are perceiving you, or how you think people are looking at you, is called the fear of identity. Let's go to another one, Ash.
I have it all written down here. This is a great one as I look down to my clipboard. I have a fear of not being able to memorize a script or be able to read out loud. Speaking to people, because I'm dyslexic, I have always had this fear of not being able to do public speaking, read off of a page, say the right thing. Sometimes when I am doing public speaking and I do have a script, I switch the words up because I'm so scared that I just kind of say whatever comes to mind first.
So when she speaks about her and her ability to memorize because she has a learning disability, this is an example of fear that you don't think you're good enough or that you're not smart enough. So the fear that Ashley has just described, or the concept that she has just described, that's going on in her head and her thinking when she thinks about her learning disability, and this learning disability that Ashley has in some ways become her story, meaning that it's become a crutch for her to rely on when she thinks about something she wants, doesn't go for it because, damn it, I have a learning disability. So when you think about her memorizing a script and knowing that she has a learning disability, this is a fear that she's not good enough and that she's not smart enough. So this fear that we have limits then the opportunities or the options that we want to create in our life. So if you think about our thinking and all that we've talked about up to this point, where you're at right now in your life, what you have, the relationships you have, the material objects you have, the level of happiness in your life that you have, the job that you have, the car that you have, the husband, the girlfriend, the boyfriend that you have, where you're at today is the result of all the thinking that you have in your head. So if you can imagine that because she's quote unquote dyslexic, which she is, she has limited herself in her life because of that learning disability and the fear that she has around it. Next.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew pontificated.
It's okay. No, but as you say that, like, I think to myself, why don't I read more books, or why am I not subscribed to more magazines? Because it's that fear of not understanding what I'm reading. So I feel like I'm just wasting my time. Just hearing you talk, it makes me realize what other things I've held myself back, because knowing that I am dyslexic and allowing that to be a primary crutch because I don't want to challenge myself.
And when you think about it, if you read more, or if you listened more, or if you studied more, would you get more?
Yeah.
Yeah. But because she has this thinking around her disability and the fear around it, it's narrowed her choices in life. Can you talk about wanting to be a hairstylist?
Yes. So wanting to be a hairstylist, the reason why I never went to cosmetology school was because the fear of not being able to find clients, relying that I have to have a clientele to be successful cosmetologist. The fear of taking clients away from a family member who is a cosmetologist, the fear of what my family would say about me going into that.
Did somebody in your family tell you not to?
Yeah, my mother told me that I shouldn't go to cosmetology school because she struggled going to cosmetology school when she first came here to United States, and that was the first time she was going to school here.
So she decided not to pursue something that she actually had an affinity for because of this fear that she made up in her head. And as she's speaking, I'm listening to some of the things she's saying, and I'm thinking, so she didn't go to cosmetology school because she didn't want to take a client from her aunt? And you may be listening to this and think, well, that's crazy, because it sounds crazy. But in reality, that's what's going on in her head. And in reality, she didn't become a hairstylist, even though she wanted to.
Yeah.
And she might have been good at it. Now, I know at this point you're looking at her and going, yeah, but she's Ashley Nell Tipton, and she's an international fashion designer, and she won Project Runway. It doesn't matter where she ended up today. What matters is that she gave up on what she wanted because of the fear that's in her head. So even though we may have stumbled into something, or maybe she overcame some of her fears to get on that program and win that program, it doesn't matter. Because our thinking and our fear in our head held us back from what we wanted.
Yes. Okay. My next fear, online dating.
Oh boy.
The reason why I had such a fear on online dating is because I felt like every man or every guy who would message me, I automatically thought that they had a fetish, which was a BBW fetish, which stands for Big Beautiful Women. And I always felt like if somebody was interested in me, that I assumed that they have a fetish for fat women, and that's what held me back from actually pursuing any friendship relationships on online dating, because I felt like I was a fetish.
And then how would you know that?
I don't.
You don't know that.
I don't know
So
that.
who made that up?
I did.
Yeah. And then how about reaching out to them?
I also was afraid of reaching out. My whole life, I've never told a crush that I had a crush. I've never asked
why?
Because I was always afraid of rejection. Because I never felt beautiful. I never felt like anyone was attracted to me. So I've never really had that experience of asking someone out or messaging them first.
So when I listen to Ashley speak about her fears, and especially 3 years ago as we've gone through and done this work, and given because she grew up fat and went through hell because she was fat, a lot of her fear and anxiety always comes from identity, meaning she's concerned about what people think about her and how she's perceived. And so for her, that's a big issue. Her identity is a big issue. Do you have a couple more that happened because of you being fat?
Let's see. I think all my fears, honestly, all my fears that I have, I feel like I have this list that goes on in my head as I'm thinking about these things that I want to do. And the first one always has to go with my weight. The second one is my looks. And I think ugly without makeup.
Talk about it. But before you do, I don't want people to be offended that we're so comfortable with the fat word here. But yes. Part of Ashley's self-acceptance has been to embrace that word.
And it honestly, and I've said this in podcasts before, that when I say the word fat, I say it with pride, because I'm taking ownership of that word, and I'm no longer allowing that word to have such a negative, heavy weight on it. It's like, you can call me fat and it's not going to do anything to me, because that word no longer has that negative weight on it. So I say it with pride, and
You can call me fag. You can call me queer. You know, when people call me names now, they don't go anywhere. It's yes and. Fat. Yes, and. So, where were we?
Feeling ugly without makeup.
Yeah.
For years, I've worn makeup since I was in middle school, and I had built up this concept or this fear in my head that if I don't wear makeup, then everyone's going to see my flaws and realize how ugly I am without it. So I would remember waking up extra early every day to do my makeup before I went to school. Even wearing makeup when I played sports. Even wearing makeup when I would do swim. Just sitting here thinking about it, it blows my mind, because I'm in a space where I can move forward from that. But just thinking back of how I stopped myself from doing a lot of things or leaving my house because I felt ugly. I felt like if I didn't have my makeup on, people would really know what I look like, or just would call me names or look at me like I literally felt like a monster.
Being with Ashley, like really being with her. I was telling Andrew, the videographer, that I actually lived in the apartment next door to Ashley for a year. So we were together constantly. And I couldn't quite understand how much her fear around being fat drove her life. And then I began to realize what it was like to be in her head, because every time she left to go anywhere, what was going through her head was, I'm fat. What are people thinking? When I walk in that restaurant, where am I going to sit? When I walk in that store, are they going to wait on me, or are they going to avoid me? So when we talk about fear, and we're going to really cover this next week, I want you to realize that it comes from somewhere. It's just not in your head because it didn't come from somewhere. So next week we're going to explore how that affected everything. So let's talk a little bit about staying in relationships.
Okay.
Because you've been in a couple now.
Yes.
Yeah. And stuck in one for a while.
Yeah, I remember being in a relationship because I was afraid that what I had at that very moment was the best that I was ever going to get, and that I was just going to have to deal with the things that I didn't like, because I could either have that or nothing. The fear of change, how this person was no longer going to be in my life. I just can remember how much fear I lived in that relationship, and how this person also influenced a lot more fears that I had about myself and not feeling good enough. So just overall, the change that I would have to make to get out of that unhealthy relationship scared me more. So then I stayed in it, and it made me really, really unhappy.
Yeah, so when we began the lesson today talking about happiness and being fulfilled. And what I'm hoping that you get as you hear us talk together is that in order to get to a point where we start to love ourselves more, we really got to address the fears that are going on in our head. And one of the biggest fears that all of us have is the fear of the unknown. Now let's add on to that right now that we're going through a pandemic.
Yeah.
So that's a big unknown, and that's scary in itself. But imagine waking up in the middle of a pandemic, which is scary, and having all these imagined fears going through your head in addition to that. And I can understand why you're depressed, and I can understand why you don't feel happy. Here's the power, is that what you got to realize is that you have total control over what's in your head. We don't have control over what's in other people's head, but you have control over what's in your head. I'd like to do one more.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have another one there that... I asked Ashley this morning to come up with a list of... She could have wrote 100 down.
Yeah. Hold on, let me just...
I think it would be great to talk about your surgery.
Which one. My surgery?
Yeah, we can do two.
Okay,
yeah.
2 more. I think this one's really important because Andrew wanted to ask me how do I feel being mixed races and if I have ever felt like a minority. And when we talked about that, I told him I didn't really know what that meant because I'm a mixed race of Mexican and American, I always felt like there was no either one that I really felt more closer to. I always felt like I was never Mexican enough, and I always felt like I was never white enough. And maybe for other people who are mixed race or come from parents who are 2 different nationalities, it's confusing for us. And I always lived in fear that I would never be with a Mexican because I'm not Mexican enough, or I would never be with a white person because I'm not white enough. And realistically, there's not enough of anything like that. It's just this thing that I made up in my head.
Who made it up?
I did.
And what did that do to your choices? What did it do to the pool of people that you might be attracted to?
It eliminated, or it just made it very, very small. And I put myself in this bubble of feeling like I was never good enough. So I never explored those options. Or I always use this example as in when I go into a Mexican grocery store, I always feel like I'm being stared at. Like, what is this güerita doing here? Or you like how I said that? Mm-hmm. Or how people will talk about me in Spanish and may not think that I understand. So I think I've always felt like I needed to go out and beyond to make it a factor that I am Hispanic or I am a mixed race.
We're not making up what's in our head. I want you to realize that. There's a reason why we've adopted these theories about fear. I'd like to end today with I think it's important that your audience know about the surgery.
Of course.
Because what you and I went through to even come to that decision, nobody was privy to. But I'll tell you, a lot of people had an opinion, And that was what held her back from doing it way before she should have.
Yeah.
Was other people's opinions. But it got to a point for me where her health was so compromised that if, damn it, she didn't do something, this young lady was not going to live very long. So even the surgery itself. Yeah, go.
I mean, being big my whole life, and trying to find a group where I could feel accepted. I don't even know how I want to start this.
Well, you did find a group.
I did. I found a group who accepted me for who I was and taught me that getting weight loss surgery is not your answer, and that it is a bad thing to do for the community, and you're only doing this because doctors want you to be a certain way, or media wants you to be a certain way, and you can never be an advocate for the plus size community if you've seeked out for weight loss surgery or have gone on a diet or have a personal trainer. So I always felt like I had to keep my secret about wanting to have weight loss surgery or to have a better, healthier life because of the people who I surrounded myself with that were completely against what I wanted to do. So I just let go of the idea of having weight loss surgery or trying to work out because I thought that accepting who I was just going to be the answer to accepting my fatness and accepting who I was and finally being myself. But then later on I realized that I was just living this life and holding myself back from so much
because of what other people
thought. And then it got to a point where I wanted to do this for myself. I wanted to get the weight loss surgery, but I was still afraid of what everyone was going to say. That when I finally had the weight loss and I finally wanted to say something, I was so afraid of it that I didn't get to enjoy my process of weight loss surgery and being able to share it with people, that it scared me so much that I've kept everything away from you guys. Everything from what my tricks or what my learning experience has been. Like, I think we both talked about wanting to share more of my weight loss journey and the struggles that I had, but I made this decision early on to not do any of that because I was afraid of what people were going to say about my surgery. And then even when I did hear what people had to say about my surgery, it scared me even more to want to share and say anything. That I stayed away from the question, did you have weight loss surgery? I stayed away from answering people's questions or concerns, or they even wanted my advice, but I was afraid of giving them advice because I had this guilt of I let people down.
At the beginning.
Yes.
So we're talking at the beginning. Talk a little bit about the other fear around the weight loss surgery, which is the
other fear. Yeah. Besides what people were going to say about my weight loss surgery, the other fear that I had was, oh my gosh, there's so many. So many fears. The next one was not being able to eat the food that I enjoyed so much. My mother's cooking. Not being able to eat the food at the family events, during the holidays. Not being able to go and socialize and eat with other people. Afraid what my friends were going to say when I wasn't eating in front of them.
Donuts.
Oh yeah, I was afraid of losing donuts because donuts was and still is my favorite thing to eat. But it even went to a fear of accepting my body for what it was transforming, and the fear of not liking my body where it was gonna be at. The fear of regretting of having the surgery because I was in so much pain, and eating, whenever I would eat something, it just wouldn't set right, and I regretted putting myself and my body in this like dramatic transformation that I didn't understand, and I've never been through this process. So just being through this whole experience of having weight loss surgery and having so much fear about what other people were going to say and how I'm letting go of everything that I once loved, overall, just you're bound to be in this space of depression because everything has changed, and it's like you no longer can go back because, like you said, like I'm on this train and this train is left the station and you can't go back from here, and you can't live in regret and fear.
Yeah, my concern, because we talked about this, we had people come in that had it done, and we asked them all these questions, but my concern with Ashley at that time was more, is she mentally there yet? I think one of the things when people would reach out to her afterwards about what's it like and should I do it, our response is always, you need to get some therapy and you need to be mentally there, because this surgery is not going to change.
It's not
if you haven't changed.
It's not just about losing weight. Yeah. It's not just changing what you put in your mouth. It all starts with your mental, where your mental state is. This morning, as I was getting ready, I was watching a video about these two women who both had weight loss surgery and how they both wished that they would have seen a therapist before they had this weight loss and after, because imagine all the fears that you put on yourself before surgery. Just because you have surgery, it doesn't mean that all those fears are finally going to go away because you're on the path of losing weight. There's all these other fears that are created during that time. Like, am I ever going to be able to eat again? Am I ever going to be able to eat these certain things? Am I ever going to see my body for what it is? Because a lot of women go through body dysmorphia during the process of losing weight. And I'm glad that I didn't experience that because I was going to therapy and talking about these issues.
And she had pretty much, before surgery, had gotten to a point where she was comfortable with who she was. Her being comfortable with who she was before the surgery made the surgery and what happened after the surgery more palatable.
Yes.
But you got to get there first. You got to be, because the fears are still going to be there.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody would have a fear about surgery and what's going to happen after the surgery and the pain of the surgery. Anybody would have that. So you got to get there mentally. I'm glad that you were able to discuss so candidly with the audience today that, because a lot of people have been asking about it.
Yeah.
It was tricky too, because a lot of our business before the surgery and a lot of the contracts we had was dependent on her being fat. And we lost that. We lost that business. And I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised by some of the things that people said. But in my mind, I realized that Ashley is the creator and the person who gets to make the choices in her life. It's her life. It's not your life. So she can choose whatever she wants in support of her health and her body, like you can.
So to wrap up today's session on fear.
So what I want you to realize is that there's all these different kinds of fear. There's fear of the unknown, a really large one.
I think
fear of rejection,
down here.
Fear of change, fear of not being smart enough, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being, and if you can recall week 1, able to sing.
Yes.
So all of these fears, but the power is that it's in your thinking, in your computer program, and who has the control over that? You. So we can't wait till next week where we begin to look at where this came from. And then the third week, we're going to look at how to resolve it.
Yay.
So thanks for being with us today. I know it's been kind of a heavy topic to talk about, and here we are.
But we're okay. I mean, it's okay to talk about these things. We're all here to learn about it and to stop the self-sabotage. So I'm excited to continue on this journey of self-love, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's lesson, and we can't wait to come back till next week. The topic will be
Fear Part 2. Where did it come from?
Before we sign off today, I want to let you guys know, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more updates on when our videos are coming out. You guys have a good one.
Bye-bye.